And of course, no one can deny there are many salacious claims going on in DA Alvin Bragg's alleged, well, actual paperwork case, really, against the former president. So there are allegations of cooperation with tabloids to cover up scandals, cries of election interference by the liberal media. But wait a minute, none of this seems to have much to do with the actual alleged crime at the center of this case, which is, we call it paperwork trial because it is about improperly listing a payment to lawyer Michael Cohen, disgraced lawyer, as a legal expense.
That's right. Joining us now to discuss the legal aspects of all the Trump court cases, criminal defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Katie Cherkasky, plus attorney Dwane Cates. Thank you both for coming on. Dwane, I'm going to start with you. Have you heard anything yet that ties in to the 34 counts of falsifying business records here? I know what David Pecker has come on and said and part of the testimony here, but have you heard anything that does this, connects it to the actual charges here?
It's going to be hard to connect it. I mean, first of all, you've got cases that are misdemeanors, that are charges that are misdemeanors that are past the statute of limitations. The only way they could bring this is try to turn them into felonies. So they not only have to prove that he made false statements in his records, that he did, and now he's not the one that made the record. His accountants and his attorney made the records. He didn't make them. So they're going to have to prove that he made those records and that those records were made for the sole purpose of covering up information in the election. And his argument's going to be, I know I did it to keep my wife from finding out. And this was, John Edwards had this same similar charges and won in a court of law on the same argument.
Katie, as we mentioned at the beginning of this segment, there are so many other allegations being thrown around, and if you turn on to some of the liberal media, they're throwing out ridiculous things that have actually nothing to do with this trial. It's like they're trying to put out a barrage of nasty things regarding the former president just in hopes that something will stick or that people who are watching will believe them, almost intentionally, I think, confusing what the reality is at the heart of this trial. Your observation and how you think this trial is going to go.
Well, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I think that part of the political strategy of bringing this case is to bring up all of these salacious allegations and hope that that impacts the electorate. But for purposes of the prosecution proving this case, the idea that there was allegations of an affair and the idea that there were hush money payments paid obviously has nothing to do with criminal offenses that are charged here. The prosecution has a very difficult case if you're looking strictly at the actual statutes. They have to prove that Donald Trump personally falsified records, and even when you're just looking at that misdemeanor offense alone, the idea that it's false to say that you paid legal payments to a lawyer is in and of itself a little bit difficult to prove. And then on top of that, they have to prove what we now know to be another misdemeanor offense that somehow escalates this into a felony, which is that he falsely promoted an election. It's the New York state election law that the prosecution disclosed yesterday. So from a technical legal standpoint, this case is incredibly difficult to prosecute. But from a political standpoint, of course, the prosecutors want to get out as much salacious information as possible to impact the election.
Dwane, I want to ask you about this. Matthew Colangelo, one of the prosecutors, said it was election fraud, pure and simple, during his opening statements. Then Trump's attorney, Todd Blanche, he said there's nothing wrong with trying to influence an election. It's called democracy. They put something sinister on this idea as if it is a crime. Your thoughts on that? I mean, this is what politicians do. They try and win an election, correct?
In that case, then, every TV commercial would be election interference, right, because they're trying to influence an election. Every rally would be. Every speech would be. Everything the candidate does is trying to influence an election. That's what politicians do. They try to get you to vote for them. I mean, it's pure and simple.
Yeah, that's exactly why a lot of people say, you know what, you don't talk about religion and politics for exactly that reason. It can get a little dicey. All right, we're out of time. Katie Cherkasky, Dwane Cates, thanks so much for your insight.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.